KRS 61-810, paragraph 1B, deliberations on the future acquisition or sale of real property by a public agency when publicity would be likely to affect the value of the property. And of course, we'll announce that at the end of the meeting, and we would ask the media to leave the meeting. I think Nahom and his team will be able to monitor that, and if necessary, they'll have to take down our YouTube page and this for that part of the meeting. Then we'll reconvene and adjourn after that. So we'll be doing that at the end of this meeting. First item on our agenda, we have a resolution recognizing former Mayor Dr. Harry Spalding in honor of everything he did for the city. We've got a resolution in his honor. Of course, he was a longtime city councilman, also a mayor for 5 years, kind of an unusual term to have a 5-year term, but that was the term when the state changed the election cycle, and all elected officials, I think, picked up an extra year during that particular time period. I attended the World War II anniversary, the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, that Dr. Harry had really planned at the Old Bardstown Village on Sunday. And we were sorry he couldn't attend, but certainly his efforts on Old Bardstown Village and being a member of our greatest generation was certainly in everybody's thoughts and minds that day. So if I could, I'd ask someone to introduce resolution 2020-7 and have our city attorney read it, please.
Mayor, if I'm in order, I'd like to introduce resolution R 2020-07, a resolution to recognize Dr. Henry S. Harry Spalding, Henry S. Harry Spalding, and have our attorney read it.
Thank you.
Resolution R 2020-07, a resolution to recognize Dr. Henry S. Harry Spalding. Whereas Dr. Harry Spalding was born in Bardstown, Kentucky in 1927 to parents Thomas William and Mary Frances Boone Spalding. And whereas Dr. Spalding graduated from the University of Kentucky with a Bachelor of Arts degree and later obtained his medical degree from the University of Louisville. And whereas Dr. Spalding was a United States Army veteran and a member of the American Legion number 121. And whereas Bardstown Family Medical Center in Bardstown was co-founded by Dr. Spalding in 1959. And whereas Dr. Spalding faithfully served as a Bardstown City Councilman from 1963 to 1981 and as mayor of Bardstown from 1994 to 1999. And whereas the old Bardstown Village was founded by Dr. Spalding in 1981. And whereas Dr. Spalding tirelessly served on the Board of Trustees of the Kentucky Medical Association, served as chairman of the Rural Medical Scholarship Fund, served on the Kentucky Board of Education, served on the Milo Kentucky Home Foundation, and was a board member and founding member in Colonial Health and Rehab in Bardstown. Now, therefore, be it resolved by J. Richard Heaton, Mayor of the City of Bardstown, that this resolution be spread upon the permanent official records of the city, and that a copy thereof be presented to the family of Dr. Henry S. Harry Spalding in recognition of his years of dedicated service to the City of Bardstown.
Thank you, Audrey. If I could, I would ask for a motion that we adopt this resolution in honor of Dr. Harry Spalding.
I'd be honored to make that motion, Mayor.
We have a motion by Councilman Hibbs. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Shekels. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Resolution is carried. Thank you. Next item on our agenda, Jessica has a water service request on Nelsonville Road area.
Yes, there's been a request by address is 630 and 710 Old Nelsonville Road by Danny and Brenda Keith and Jacob Kurtzinger. They currently do not have water along this portion of Old Nelsonville Road, and they are proposing about 2,450 feet of 4-inch water main extension along Old Nelsonville Road in order to serve and be hooked into sewer. So they have a engineering plan submitted for approval that we will then take over ownership of, and then to be able to serve these two residents on that portion of Old Nelsonville Road.
So how many feet was that? And they will be doing the construction or paying for the construction of this line, right?
Yes, yes. It's a little 2,450 feet of line. And again, the line currently ends further down Old Nelsonville Road. And a lot of the other existing residents on Old Nelsonville Road, their properties back up to Boston Road. So a lot of those existing residents have water already from Boston Road. But these folks down here on the south side of Old Nelsonville Road have just never had water run down there. But there's vacant property on either side. So at this point, there's kind of been a change in folks and a need for water. So they are making this main extension and dedicating that to the city upon its completion and meeting all requirements.
Okay.
That's a little expensive project, isn't it, Jessica?
It's definitely not inexpensive, but it's actually in a location where the digging should be pretty good. It's just not something that back when there were a lot of grants available to serve lots of Kentucky, a lot of counties went in and ran public water. But again, the density was just not such that at the time, there weren't enough people being added to this section of line. I believe there's some property adjacent. Again, it's still just farmland, but there's a potential, the way property's going and residents, that could become developed at some later time, or at least have larger parcels tracted off. But again, these two folks are needing some water, and they're meeting all the requirements for that.
I got a question, Jessica. If they pay for the construction of this line and everything, and then if somewhere down the line that farmland gets developed into a neighborhood or a residential section, can they speak? Would those people pay to get hooked on this line? Would they pay these people for hooking onto that line that they used? Or
if they go through the process of creating a construction reimbursement contract, and that contract agreement would need to come back to the city council if that's what they desire to do, in order for the city to collect that money at the time of tap on from those future folks. But again, I'm not really sure. I haven't gone back and looked. It could be that some of this farmland is in the floodplain, and maybe that's one of the reasons they didn't see a lot of benefit of folks, asking that other property owner at this time. I just know that property had been recently surveyed, and that person did grant an easement for this line to run along that property. But again, I'm not real sure if that's in the floodplain or not, and I have not yet had a request for a reimbursement agreement, to be implemented. Maybe they're still working on getting that pricing before they bring that forward.
That's probably a good way to recoup some of their investment, because that doesn't sound like it's going to be an inexpensive project for them. Anyway, just a question.
Any other questions of Jessica on this request? She's evaluated the plan through Horizon, and it meets our specifications. If there are no more questions, I would ask for a motion to approve the water service request for 630 and 710 Old Nelsonville Road.
So move, Mayor.
A motion by Councilman Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Councilman Williams?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is carried. All right, next item is the minutes from our August 25th meeting. If there's no additions or corrections, we can approve them by unanimous consent. Anyone have any corrections or additions? All right, we'll just approve them by unanimous consent. Next, I'm going to have Aaron Bowles give us kind of an overview of our August 2020 financial report, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Pretty quiet month. Still, we're still really early on in our fiscal year 21. So not too much to discuss here, but we'll go over a few things. If you wanted anything more in depth, you can look at the write-up that I provided on the agenda. General fund revenue for the month was $818,000. 92% of that was occupational license fees or net profit fees. The net profits were a little bit low this month. We're still on track as far as a nominal percent of budget. We're at about 16%, just under 16% of what we're seeing there. Year-to-date revenue was $1.29 million, or 11% of our 11 million budgeted. The combined utilities saw revenue of $3.3 million. 96.7% of that was almost virtually all of it was general service charges for electric service, water, sewer service, things like that. Year to date, the combined utilities, the revenue is running about 11.3% of budget. Down in expenditures, the general fund, we had $796,530 of expenditures for the month. 58% of that was in salaries, benefits, and payroll taxes. You can see we had a few large items. The multi-use path construction costs were around $126,000. We paid out some of our grants and contributions that we budget each year. NCEDA, Industrial Development Corporation, Chamber, and Airport Board, things like that. Some of those we pay quarterly, some of them we pay annually. So the larger amounts that we budget will be paid out quarterly. So see those again later on in the year. Recreation building, continuing repairs of that. That project is just over $25,000. Year-to-date expenditures on the general fund coming in at 12.4% of the $10.9 million budgeted. In the combined utilities, we had expenditures of just over $3 million, with the majority of that being purchased electricity for a resale that we get from KU. And then one large expenditure was our lagoon cleaning sludge removal at the Jerry Riley plant. It was just over $500,000 there. Just as an overall review, it looks like the general fund expenditures are outpacing revenue, but that's just inherent with the style of revenue that we get in the general fund. The combined utilities is more like a business, of course, so it's revenues outpacing expenditures as normal, as it should be. The general fund will see some spikes in revenue as property tax and OLF continue to come in, which OLF is mostly quarterly filings. Any questions? Feel free to ask.
Any questions for Aaron on this part? We'll probably have some more discussion here with the next item on the agenda about the general fund as a whole. All right, thank you, Aaron, for the report. And yeah, we typically will see more tax revenue come in the fourth quarter. And also there's been net profits have been given somewhat of a holiday. They've been pushed back to, Aaron, was that October 15th before they're going to be due completely for this past year?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe the IRS typical last day for businesses to file on the IRS side is October 15th.
Right. And then we'll have property taxes that'll come in primarily in the fourth quarter. So that revenue, like I say, is not as consistent as the utility side of things. It's more consistent on a monthly basis.
Correct. And all the property tax revenue, that'll be accrued either the end of this month or sometime in October.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the next item then on the agenda, which is we have to do this every year. It's part of the setting our property tax rates. We just got the assessments from the Pba, and I'm going to let Aaron speak to. We have three options that we've come up with for you all to consider, and then we'll hopefully have a first reading on whichever one we decide to go with this evening. So Aaron, if you want to walk us through these, please.
Okay. I presented three options. There are more options, of course. You can really levy a tax rate of anything you want, honestly, but anything over a 4% increase qualifies for a recall vote. So you typically don't want to get involved in that. In the attachment on the agenda, it goes through each of those options for you, but we'll kind of discuss them. As I said in the last meeting, our Pba assessments that were provided by the Property Valuation Administrator are up $65,801,000 this year. And that's just on your real estate property. Our personal property taxes, which comes from a business's inventory and office equipment, things like that. Those assessments increased $2.6 million. And just on a reference, in 2019, our rates were 17.9% across the board. So real and personal both had the same rate. So this year, under that item on the agenda, option one, we can leave rates the same as 2019. However, that qualifies due to that assessment increase, that qualifies as a 4% increase because although the tax rate that the taxpayers are paying is the same as last year, the city's going to see 4% more revenue. So unless they their assessment of their home, the value of their home increased, this taxpayer's actually going to have the same tax bill as last year, but we will see an increased revenue because of the assessments. So option one, leave them the same, 7.9% on both. That'd give us an additional $122,584 in revenue for the tax year. Option two.
So let me just comment, say something clear, because it seems like every year we have to go through this exercise. And to what Aaron just said, people whose property and businesses whose property did not get an increase, by leaving the rate the same, their taxes will be the same. You know, the city does not control the assessment. That comes from the Property Valuation Administration and the state. We also don't have any control over school taxes and or the county taxes that people who live in the city get all three of those tax bills. So sometimes people get confused that we change their property values and that we also make the school tax decision, but that's not the case here. So those people who got a new assessment, their tax bill was going to go up, whether it was on the compensating rate or keeping it the same. So it's a difference of 60 cents per 100. So it's not a huge change there in either way. So I just want to make that clarification as we get into this other discussion. So Aaron, if you go ahead and talk about the next two options, please.
Okay. Option two would be to accept the compensating rate. And the compensating rate on real estate is calculated based upon your prior year tax level plus increases or decreases of assessments values. But it doesn't include any new property additions. So the compensating rate on real property this year was 17.3 cents per 100. And that's, like the mayor said, 60 cents less than what it would be based upon the current rate. The maximum allowed under KRS statute, we're allowed to change the personal property rate based upon a percentage increase that we see in real property. So if the real property goes up 100,000, then I can assess personal property based upon the percentage of increase that's happening year over year. So what that's called is it gives me a maximum allowed personal property rate. So based upon that compensating rate of 17.3 cents, or yes, per 100, our maximum allowed rate on personal property would be 18.1 cent per 100. This option gives us approximately $61,175 in additional revenue, and requires no public hearing because you're basically keeping the city's revenue level the same as far as real property goes. Option 3 is the compensating rate for both real and personal property. Again, that would be 17.3 cents per 100 on real and 17.6 cents per 100 on personal property. And again, the city would see approximately the same amount as it did in 2019 with this option.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. And I asked Aaron to put together some information for you to consider, as he and I talked last week extensively about the rate. The difference of 60 cents on a $200,000 home is $12 a year. $300,000 home, it's $18 a year. It's not a huge difference, but cumulatively, I mean, there's like 4,000 properties within the city limits. So keeping the rates the same, it would raise us $122,000, and that's all goes to the general fund. And the general fund is an $11 million fund. So this represents, if we keep the rates the same, this represents basically a 1% income increase in our income for that fund. And that fund pays for the police and the fire and the recreation, streets, swimming pool, administration, finance, and so forth. And there's a number of things we've got to consider that we really could use the additional revenue that we would get by keeping the rates the same. And that is, our health insurance has gone up 30% this year. It's $148,000. They froze our retirement rates to current year 24% on non-hazardous and 39.6% on hazardous. But next year, that's going to go up 12%. Continue to go up 12%, Aaron, I think, until it reaches 50 cents on the dollar. So we're facing, in the near future, having to pay 50 cents on the dollar for every dollar of wages we pay for police and fire. Fire department, we took $1.3 million out of our unrestricted reserves to pay for the new fire department, which is going to provide a lot better safety and coverage. And it also has resulted in reduced premiums for some property owners because our ISO rating went from a 6 to a 3, and we think that rating will go even lower the next time around. So some people are paying less in insurance premiums as a result of this new station. But the key part of that is the coverage and response time is going to be much improved by having that second station. And of course, we ordered a new fire truck that will be here in 14 to 18 months. It's needed to replace one that's nearing 30 years old. $672,000 will have to be spent to pay for that. And the recreation department, I don't know about you all, but I get calls probably every month from people wanting more recreational opportunities for our children. And I do not disagree a bit. I think we should have more recreational opportunities. But just in the last few years, we spent $200,000 on our community park and Woodson Rogers Park. And we're currently in the process of spending another $200,000 on the recreation center. And as you can see, over the next 2 years, as you can see, that $122,000 doesn't go very far in these general fund needs. And I'm sure some of you, I know some of you all have gotten calls in the last few weeks from people as they've seen blacktopping go on in the city, wanting to know when their streets are going to get blacktopped. And as you know, we lost 12% of our municipal aid, which meant we lost between $60,000 and $70,000 of that funds we get from the state every year that helps supplement our asphalt paving budget. So we put in the same amount this year in our budget as we normally do, but we're going to only be able to pay $60,000 less because of the cut that the state has made because of the gas tax income is way down. So, you know, that puts us $60,000 behind going into next year. So again, this $122,000 could help pay some of that difference. And finally, you know, we don't know yet the extent of what the COVID is going to have on us. You know, there's still 13 million people unemployed in the United States, and you know, the federal government is spending billions and billions of dollars because of the coronavirus. The states and the local municipalities are getting millions and millions of dollars in less revenue. So people want the services, but we do have to have an income stream to pay for these. And I don't think it's unreasonable to keep the rates the same and let us collect $122,000 more in property tax this year. And again, reminding people who might be watching or listening that that is not a 4% increase in their tax bill. That's a 4% increase in the total income that the city collects on property assessments. So if you divide that up by 4,000 residents, you know, you can do the math. It's not a huge increase, you know, in total revenue for us, but that's kind of my position. And I think I don't want to take away from what Aaron had just said, but that's what I'm recommending that you all consider. But you know, it's your all's decision to make it. You know, if you want to go to the compensating rate and just keep revenue flat, you know, that's an option. But we sure have a lot of needs in the general fund for the use of this money to provide the services that the people want, particularly with streets, particularly with fire and police, you know, recreation. This is the only way we can pay for those services.
Barry, of course, you might want to make note too that even with option one, the majority of the residents in the cities is not going to experience a tax increase. It's just going to be those residents who haven't had their property evaluated probably in the last 10 years. They were going to see it. They were going to see a difference increase in their taxes regardless.
That's correct.
But the majority of the people in the city are not going to experience an increase in their tax bill. Just for the record.
Right. And I'll just to break down the numbers a little bit for you. Our Pba assessments on real estate in Bardstown was $1.074 billion. And so the increase is roughly 6%. So 65 million out of over $1 billion in assessments, you know.
So you're saying the average increase is about 6%?
Well, that's what this increase is.
What the net difference.
So Aaron, does this include all new buildings and homes that have been built? Does that include those in those numbers too?
No.
No.
The rates are calculated by taking out additions or deletions, and it's just comparing apples to apples, basically, what last year's tax roll looks like with being reassessed, and plugging that in for this year's number.
Anyone have some other questions of Aaron? I mean, we need to probably have a vote on whether we're going to go with keeping the rates the same or going with the compensating rate, one of those two choices, and have a first reading tonight. And then we'll have a second reading on the 22nd.
So I guess, Mayor, if I could just make one point that kind of what stands out to me and what the options that Aaron has presented and what you have presented tonight. As far as option one is concerned, leaving the rates the same, you're looking at a revenue increase to the city of about $122,000, which is only about 1% of our annual budget, as far as the increase is concerned. Which doesn't go very far in covering some of the new, as you stated earlier, the fire department addition, new fire truck, and things that are beneficial to our taxpayers that are going to go a long way forward as far as safety. I don't think that's a lot of revenue as far as that revenue that's going to be coming from option one is not going to go very far to address a lot of the improvements that are being made.
Right. It's like, people want their streets paved. They want better recreational opportunities for the kids. And, I think we've made some pretty heavy investment in recreation and streets here in the last few years, but I'd love to do more, but I'm not asking for an increase in tax rate. We just want to keep it the same, and we will gain because there has been some reassessment. But that actually happens each and every year. There is some increase in some reassessments and some expansions and so forth. So it's, I think it's a very practical option for us.
Well, and also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the past, I don't recall seeing the option of the split between compensating rate and maximum allowed personal. Seems like we've always had option 3 as being a 4% increase overall. Is that true?
Yeah, you probably could have seen where we had a different rate for both, property versus personal property, real estate versus personal.
Okay.
We have changed that from time to time. That's why you're seeing these two rates proposed.
Okay.
There, I can't remember in my terms here that we've ever left it the same, or have we?
Just last year was the first time I remember both rates being the same. And the times that I'm like you, the times that I remember, I think our real property has always been a tad bit higher than real estate. Mm-hmm. And I'm proposing to keep them both the same this year as last year.
Yeah, our property tax rates have been falling really since 2018. It was 18.2 cents on real property. 2019 is when we dropped it to the 17.9, and we kept it the same through for 2019 also. I'm just looking back through here.
Yeah, because we'd always taken option number 2.
Yeah.
In the last several years, we haven't we haven't taken option number one for at least, probably 10 years, probably.
Yeah, I can't even remember.
Yeah.
I
Tax rate's
remember
been-
the last time we did that, but then we used option number one, where we could option to get the automatic 4% increase. We haven't done that in years, probably at least 10 years, I know.
Mayor,
Yeah.
also, where does our rate fall within cities of our size? I know that was a stat that we had last time.
You know, I didn't look at it. I've been crunching that number. I've been crunching the number, trying to see how we're going to pay for all these general fund services and try to balance our budget as best I could. So I spent more time reviewing all these numbers we shared with you tonight, all the increases. I mean, inflation hits, city just like it does other households. And I know some people want to say, well, do more with less, but I think we're providing a lot more in services with only a 1% increase in the overall revenue for the general fund. And we just, list has been there with everything we've invested with police and fire and recreation and streets. Everybody is constantly requesting this, and we're trying to just keep up with the needs. Inflation alone is running close to between 2.5% and 3%. So this is only a 1% increase to our total general fund revenue and 4% gross increase on just the property tax revenue.
Thank you.
So, I would entertain a motion that we adopt one of these three options, and then we've got an ordinance that we can do a first reading on whichever one you also choose.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we consider option one for our property rate options.
All right, that's keeping the rates the same as last year on
Leaving the
both
same as keeping the rates the same, yes, sir.
real and personal. All right, we
Yes.
have a motion by Councilman Buckman. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion, Mayor.
Second by Councilman Jones. Any other discussion or questions?
Just want to make a comment, Mayor, that everyone, even if we do take option number one, that again, the majority of the taxpayers in the city are not going to see an increase in their taxes.
That's correct.
It's just going to be the people that haven't had their property assessed in quite some time. And that was going to come regardless of what we did with this rate here, with this option rate. So just to reiterate that.
Yeah, the change for them is, if they had basically had a $200,000 house, it's what is assessed at now. The difference in the two rates is $12. If it's a $300,000 house, the difference is $18. So it's not it doesn't take into consideration how much the increase went up, but just for those values that I just cited, that's the difference there. All right, we have the motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Mayor, may I make a comment? And I'm
Yes, ma'am.
sorry I tuned in late, so you may have already said this, but I'd like to reiterate that the city has nothing to do with the tax assessments. That is not does fall under our job. And we also have nothing to do with the city school tax rates.
Right. Yeah, we covered that early on, but that's just like what Councilman Shekels just said, that if your house assessment didn't change, and your tax bill from the city won't change. We don't control the school tax bill or the county bill, which includes the fiscal courts taxes and or the Nelson County school system taxes. All right, we have any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So that takes us down to ordinances. We have remember our last meeting, Councilman Dones made a suggestion that we needed to clarify some of the language in our sign ordinance regulation. That was, I think, a good point that he found. So we're going to reintroduce this for a first reading. If I could get someone to introduce ordinance B 2020-12, please. And we'll have our city attorney, Audrey Hayden, read it for us, please.
Mayor, if I may be in order, I'd like to introduce ordinance number B 2020-12, an ordinance amending and adopting as amended, an ordinance styled sign ordinance, and ask our city attorney to read it.
Thank you. Councilman Hibbs.
Summary of ordinance B 2020-12, an ordinance amending and adopting as amended, an ordinance styled sign ordinance. This ordinance amends Chapter 98 Sign Ordinance, Section 98.05 definitions of the municipal code by amending the definition of campus as set forth below. Campus, add 1. A business situated on 50 or more acres of land comprised of 2 or more buildings for separate but related commercial purposes and zoned I2 according to the Joint City-County Planning Commission zoning map, or adding, or number 2, any school building or school athletic facility in its surrounding land, whether a public or private institution, regardless of the number of acres of land, which is being used as a school building and or school athletic facility. This ordinance or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are repealed to the extent of such conflict. This ordinance shall be in full force and effect following publication in summary as required by law. The summary was certified by Audrey Hayden, City Attorney.
Councilman Dones, does that kind of catch what you hope you were pointing out last week, that we wanted to be more specific, making sure that it applied to school property that was still being used as school property or athletic complexes?
Yes, Mayor, that's exactly what I had in mind. Thank you very much.
Okay. This is a first reading, so we won't take a vote on that. We'll have a second reading at the next meeting. So it looks like we need to introduce ordinance number B 2020-13, which relates to property tax rates on option 1 that we just approved.
Mayor,
So
I can do that.
Yes, you'd like to, Councilman Buckman?
Yes, I'd like to introduce ordinance number B 2020-13, property tax 4%. Is that right?
All right.
Okay.
Audrey, if you could read that for us, please.
Ordinance number B 2020-13, property tax 4%. An ordinance amending and adopting as amended, an ordinance styled, an ordinance levying tax on property subject to tax in the city of Bardstown, fixing rates thereon and designating the funds and purposes for which expenditures are authorized for the fiscal year July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. The City Council of the City of Bardstown, Kentucky does hereby ordain as follows. Number 1, that there be and hereby is levied the sum of 0.1790 cents on each $100 of real property subject to taxation, the sum of 0.1790 on each $100 of personal property subject to taxation, and the sum of 24 cents on each $100 of motor vehicle and watercraft subject to taxation in the city of Bardstown for the fiscal year July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. Number 2, all monies hereinafter collected for taxes due for the year 2020 through 2021 and all years prior thereto shall be allocated to the general fund for the general expenses of city government, including but not limited to recreation, police, and fire protection, general government, and the maintenance of streets and highways. Number 3, collection of property tax bills of $10 or less may be waived by the chief financial officer. Number 4, all taxpayers whose taxes are not paid by the due date printed on the bill and or by the 30th of day after the mailing of the tax bill, whichever is later, shall pay a penalty of 10% of the amount of taxes due and unpaid, and in addition thereof shall pay interest on the unpaid taxes at the rate of 1% per month or part thereof until paid. 5, a convenience fee of $2.95 or 3.5%, whichever is greater, will be levied on any credit card transaction payment of property tax bills. This ordinance shall be in full force upon its publication, and all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict are hereby repealed to the extent of that conflict.
Thank you, Audrey. And this is the first reading, so we'll have our second reading at our September 22nd meeting. And I think what I'm planning to do is have that meeting in person as far as the public hearing, and where we could have that about at 6:45 on the September 22nd. And that way, if some people do want to come and make a comment, I think we can spread the council members and staff out and be safe with our mask on and so forth. And then if there are a number of people that show, we can allow them perhaps to come in individually and make their comments. But if there's not, if there's like the normal group that comes, I think we can still spread them out and be safe and conduct the public hearing that way. It's, I think it's going to be much easier than trying to do it via Zoom and have people. It just would be very difficult to invite people and have them register and be able to send them an invitation to the meeting and so forth. We've looked at some of those options in other cities, and it's a very, very, very cumbersome prospect. So I think we will work on having that meeting, that public hearing, allowing people to come in person if they so choose. And we'll have that perhaps 15 minutes prior to our regular scheduled meeting on September 22nd. So you'll see more on that in the next week or so, but that's sort of what Aaron and Gary Little and Nahom and I have discussed from a practical standpoint of trying to have the public hearing and do it in a way that works best for everybody. All right. Next item on the agenda is our resolution 2020-06, and Councilwoman Hart followed up with this on the KLC. So Betty, would you like to introduce this resolution for us, please?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to introduce resolution R 2020-06 and ask the city attorney to read it, please.
Resolution R 2020-06, a resolution authorizing the mayor to proclaim the month of September 2020 as City Government Month. Whereas civics education in Kentucky schools is important to ensure future generations are engaged and involved in their local community and its governance. And whereas elementary schools are a prime location for the introduction of local government principles and responsibilities. And whereas involving and informing students of local government programs and duties can provide an opportunity for entire families to connect with vital city services and programs. And whereas there are 416 cities in Kentucky and 55% of the state's population lives in a city. And whereas City Government Month is a civics awareness campaign that educates elementary school students about city services by providing teachers' lesson plans, a coloring activity book, and an implementation guide. And whereas City Government Month calls on city officials to get involved in their local schools and in educating and engaging elementary school students in city government. And whereas the KLC Board of Directors has declared September 2020 as City Government Month in Kentucky, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Bardstown, Kentucky does hereby designate September 2020 as City Government Month. Be it further resolved that city officials and employees are encouraged to collaborate with local elementary schools to educate students about their city government and to engage them in city services.
Okay, thank you, Audrey. Betty, would you want to kind of just give us an overview of what we did last year during
Yes.
this?
Last year, we ran the essay contest. If you remember, I think we had over 50 entries from students at Bardstown, St. Joe, and Foster Heights. I meant to pull the little girl that won, but she came to our meeting and read her essay. So I'm going to reach out to the teachers. I'm not sure, what their participation level may be this year because things are so strange. And of course, the city schools just went back in session today as in person. So hopefully there's still some interest there. The KLC provided a lot of good information on their website for activities and plans and different things like that, but I'm not sure if this is the year that we can actually implement those. So I have discussed it with one teacher, and she thinks it would be, worth a try, but she's not sure how much they'd be able to participate. But we'll give it a shot and see what happens. And then hopefully next year things are back to our new normal, and we can do a few more things. And then last year too, I tried to go out into the schools and read stories and invited the other council to do the same. But this year, I know that's not going to be allowed. So I don't know if there's any other way that as councilmen, if we could participate with our schools, but open to any suggestions that anybody might have.
All right, thank you, Betty. So we've need a motion then to adopt resolution R 2020-06, proclaiming the month of September as City Government Month.
I'll make that motion, Mayor, to authorize resolution 20-20-06 as September is National City Government Month in Kentucky.
All right, thank
I'll
you.
second it, Mayor.
We have a motion by Councilman Shekels and a second by Councilman Williams. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion's carried. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a zoning map amendment, and typically we have, in the Planning Commission adopts a change for the longest period of time. I've seen most of them are always 100% unanimous vote, but in this particular case, this was a 6-3 vote. And I wanted to kind of explain some of the background. This particular address is an address that faces O'Brien Avenue, and what the city, it's not an ordained position, but what Planning Commission and what the city kind of has adopted over the years is once that portion of town, that 3rd Street section of town there from the railroad tracks up to Dardery, many of those homes that face 3rd Street were homes. I mean, they're now commercial properties, but back in the 60s and 70s, before that area started changing, those were residences. So the city's position had been, once that happened, was they felt, okay, it's just sort of a change in what's happened in that block, with those properties facing North 3rd Street, that it would be practical to rezone those properties facing 3rd Street to commercial or professional. And we only allowed those businesses facing 3rd Street to be rezoned professional and commercial, which meant either the lot that those properties were on or back to the alley there, which many of those properties went all the way back to the alley. So in this case, this would be the first property not facing 3rd Street that goes beyond the alley, or not, well, it's on the inside of the alley, I should say, that would be permitted to rezone to a professional and or commercial use. And it's sort of been the feeling of the city over this last 30 years or so that we wanted to be conscious to protect the residential fiber of Henrytown. And as you know, there's a Henrytown Pride group in the Garden District and so forth that's trying to, revitalize that neighborhood. So this would be allowing a property that was a single-family residential property not facing 3rd Street to become commercial or professional, in this particular case, P1. So that's kind of the concern that I have, and it was a 6-3 vote. So they were not unanimous in their consideration of this motion. So I throw that out to you all for some discussion. If you think it's okay, maybe because of its location and near that large, what used to be Northgate Apartments and Smith and Associates, the insurance office and so forth, if that would be okay or not. It just would set a precedent where more properties going more than one lot deep would start maybe requesting that change.
Mayor, I got a question. The property that's adjoining that the property we're talking about, where the White House that's next to that was fenced in, was that not a daycare at one time?
Yes,
Right there
that
on
was
that
Miss
corner?
Cassidy's daycare.
Yeah, wasn't that, now that's not the same, that's rezoned. We haven't rezoned that back to R1, have we?
I don't know if that ever was rezoned from R1 or not. I don't know if it was zoned professional or if it was sort of a grandfathered thing back in the day when, she operated that during the 60s, I think, and maybe possibly into the 70s. But that house now is a single family residence. It's not being operated as a daycare any longer.
I was just curious if that zoning has been designated as still R1 or not. I probably should have checked into that.
Bill,
Or else
according
it was-
according to these, the planning and zoning documents here that we have to the east, it is still zoned R1C. And also to the south, I guess across the street there would be R4. So 2 out of the 4 adjoining properties are zoned residential that are bordering this. And it looks like on their application that they state that it's all commercial all around the property, but in fact, 2 of those properties are zoned residential.
Well, I know, yeah, it's not zoned commercial. It's not zoned commercial. Only one's commercial is that building that's in front of it, where it used to be the pawn shop.
Right. And these people now own, I think, both of those properties. They, as you know, they're doing a remodeling to the pawn shop property, and I think plan to hopefully rent this out for offices. I don't think they would be the same operation, but I think they bought both of them, and they've put quite a bit of money into this property, remodeling it. I just don't know whether we want to set the precedent to start going further east off of 3rd Street, either to the alley or beyond one lot facing 3rd Street, start creating more professional or commercial zones.
Mr. Mayor, I'm kind of on both sides of the fence on this. I like the fact back, when they tried to save all the residents, to try to keep as many residents in Henrytown as possible. I really like that. I think over time that street obviously has changed. But the other side of that is I like the fact in our comp plan that we have specific spots for residences, we have it for businesses, and I think we did that on purpose. And if Nelson County and Bardstown has something, I think our comp plan is really good in that respect. But the other side of that is I'm a property owner myself, so I hate the fact that property people can't use that. And to me, it's not an offensive use. And then there was a restriction in there that it, in the professional, that it would have to be, it couldn't be like for any kind of retail or anything of that nature. It had to be strictly professional. And since, it's all the way around it, in this case, I could probably go along with that. But just because I think I'm in favor of the property owner being able to use his property to his advantage. So.
Right. Well, so you brought that up, it made me think that several years ago, there was a property on the corner of 5th and Beale that was right next to the school and right next to the adjoined the school property across the street from the school that was owned by the housing authority that was permitted to go professional for a law office several years ago. That property was known as the Hubbard property on Beale and 5th Street. We did grant that to be professional, but if it ever sold, it was to go back to the residential zoning, I think. My memory serves me right. So that was done there kind of in a similar sense that it was professional for a law office and joined by some residential, but also in this case, it was joined by a school, whereas in this case, you've got residential, but you've got high density residential multifamily across the street, significant multifamily across the street, 2 developments there. So, so
Mayor,
you all can either, go ahead. Go ahead.
May I
Debbie.
weigh in?
Yes, ma'am.
From a realtor standpoint, I think it would be very hard for the owners to sell or rent this out as residential property based on the fact that it's right behind the pawn shop and right across from the apartments. And just based on how it's laid out and the area around it, I wouldn't have a problem giving it the professional office district.
Right. The property that adjoins it to the west and to the north is commercial.
Right. I'm looking at it on PBA right now.
Well, also, Betty, if you look at that, if you're looking at that block, and I tend to agree with Joe on this, is that it appears to me that the true residential feel or the residential neighborhood actually starts after the alley.
I agree.
Because
I agree.
most of those commercial properties extend all the way back to the alley anyway, and pretty much surround that property. And the way I see it, by looking at the PVA and then looking at the overhead, I mean, it looks like the residential neighborhood actually starts after that alley. That's how I perceive it.
That's a good point. It falls between the alley and North 3rd Street. Yeah.
Right.
Good point.
But guys, if you go down a few blocks, there are houses directly behind those commercial buildings, just like this street is. If you go to Darty, for example, there's a house that's directly behind a CPA firm there, and then there's
some behind Domino's.
Yes. So it's not the only piece of property like that. That's for sure.
Right.
So Joe, do you think that we're starting a dangerous precedent then in that regard?
My only, that building actually feels like it belongs to the pawn shop already. I don't know if it's the parking situation or what it is, but I'd be a lot easier with this if those 2 pieces of property were probably deeded together and if they were both owned by the same person. But I do believe that is so changed in that street that I have to agree with Betty. I'm not sure that that house is going to go back to being a very nice residential piece of property. I think it'll actually probably be better as a commercial piece and maintain better than if it was a house for them.
And there's an L.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
There's an L-shaped piece of property around this house that's owned by the pawn shop.
Yeah, the same people own this property that own the pawn shop now. So
the L-shaped, yes.
And a portion of this property's side yard on the west side is blacktop. That portion of that was blacktop for the use of what was ever there before the pawn shop. I think it was a beer joint or something. So that was permitted. as part of that parking lot. I don't know if they separated it, but originally it was part of the side yard of this property.
I didn't get to see the minutes of the meeting, but were there any residents, people that lived there, anybody come to oppose it? I don't remember seeing that.
I do not think so. In the past, there was some of the residents that lived in that area. Some of you all might remember Kenneth Osborne. He kind of kept an eye on the neighborhood in that area, even though he lived probably another 2 blocks down. And I think when the pawn shop at the other end of the block wanted to buy and rezone that house immediately behind it, between it and the alleyway, there was quite a bit of opposition from that group there on, I think that's Daugherty. But Daugherty primarily is all still residential facing Daugherty. There's no non-residential property on Daugherty there on that block.
So I got maybe one more question here. If this plan that was provided here from Horizon showed the parking, and is this actually part of what was approved, that layout also? Or is that still subject to more zoning regs, or do we know that?
I don't know that there's any, I think the parking that's there that they show is already there. You know.
That is already there.
Yeah, a portion of that side yard was paved several years ago.
On
Joe,
that
I see
alley.
what you're looking at too. It looks like it's coming off the alley, Campbell Alley.
It is coming.
Yeah,
it is off
okay. If it's coming off the alley, then that's been added. That's been approved then. I'm sorry. I'm speaking to the property on the west side.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like they're gonna make most of the east parking.
Yeah, but that's a pretty big lot. It goes pretty deep.
Mayor, I've got a question. The 3 opposing votes that went against this motion, did they bring up the same objections that you did, or the same concerns that you did? Or
Yes,
do you know?
I do know. Yes. And some of them were, long-term members who had, and I think who are also more Bardstown residents versus the other members that were appointees out in the county area.
I mean, it's
Mayor,
definitely going against our comp plan. There's no question about it.
What was that, Joe?
I said it's definitely goes against our comprehensive plan. But then again, I'm sure we've made provisions before, and like I said, the property owner should be able to try to use his property the best it can be used. So that's why I said I'm on both sides of the fence here. I really can't. I don't know, exactly which side I should take on this. So.
Well, we can either vote to deny it. We do have that option, and have to have a reason for that, or you can vote to approve the vote of the Planning Commission.
Mayor, is there any, just looking at this parking map, as Joe was questioning earlier, and since this is not in the historic district and it's not, is there any plans to your knowledge to raise that building in question?
Not that I'm aware of. It looks like to me they've already gone in and spent a bunch of money renovating it in the last few months.
Okay.
So it looks like to me that's their intent, to use it as an office building, and especially with this parking layout. But so it probably would be a hardship on them if the vote of the commission wasn't upheld. To Betty's point, to Joe's point about the use of that as a residence and return on investment.
You know, and I think the vote, the motion was there was a hardship that was mentioned in that. Maybe that's where that came from, because they'd already invested this money in the improvements and so forth. I'm assuming that's, I don't know where else that would come from.
Well, I'm probably sure there was if it was a split vote, that they had quite a bit of discussion, probably more so than we're having right now on rezoning this property. So, you know, I'm kind of pro ownership on that too. I see your point where it'd be kind of difficult to, I don't know if I'd want to live right there if I've got to. Does anybody know what the new building that what used to be the pawn shop, what it's going to be now?
I do not know what that's going to be.
Well, apparently it's going to be something decent because they're doing a lot of work.
It's not going to be a pawn shop. I don't think anymore. But
well, they're doing a lot of work to it.
For sure.
But you know, that use could change in a year. You know, we can't. You have to look at that property as what it is, not what it's going to be, type thing. This year anyway, as opposed to what it could be next year. But,
It is
at this
difficult, but if
point,
you
I'm
really
gonna be
look at
honest.
this,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Joe.
Sorry,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go.
you know, really looking at this, I'm looking at this on Google Earth, like Betty was saying too. If you look at everything to the north of this property, it extends like the dentist office all the way from the west to the east to the alley. Same way with the old funeral home, the mortgage building, all that stuff is parking. So most of the stuff on this block until you get up to Daugherty is commercial. So it'd be hard not to grant them that as well, being one of the only residential homes on that particular block.
Well, there was a similar denial. There was a similar denial if you look at the Daugherty. There was a similar case over there, and there was a denial on one that wanted to rezone that had similar surroundings, you know, with commercial next to it. But as Joe said, Daugherty is more all residential facing the street. But there could be an argument made that that's a similar situation to the north.
Yeah, you got
Yeah, I see
both
what you're
sides
talking
of that
about.
street that's all residential pretty much. Whereas both sides of O'Brien is really
Yeah.
high density.
And Mayor, if we
residential
don't,
on one side.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
I was going to say, if we don't approve this, that house is just going to just look like it's in the wrong place with all that commercial on both sides of it and in back of it. So we might be better served to approve this.
Right. Is there any other discussion? If there is none, I would entertain a motion either to approve the rezoning as it was 2591, as it was approved by the Georgia City Planning Commission, or a motion to deny based on whatever reasons you might have for that motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we uphold the Planning Commission's ruling. And based on the fact that I think it would provide a hardship to the owners and I don't think it would be a sellable piece of property for residential based on its location in the surrounding area.
All right, we have a motion by Councilwoman Hart. Is there to uphold the zoning map amendment 2591 from R1C to P1 professional?
I'll second that, Mayor.
We have a second by Councilman Williams. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Uh,
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion's carried. Thank you. And I appreciate the discussion on that. And we'll go ahead. Any of the council members have anything to bring before the council this evening? All right, if nothing there, we've got cemetery deeds, Brenda Waldridge, purchase of 1 grave site, and Laura Pointer, purchase of 2 grave sites. We can do that by unanimous consent. And then I don't really have an update, but I want Chief Billy Mattingly and Chief Cressig to give us a quick update on what's happening with the fire and police here in the last few weeks. Chief Billy?
Yes, Mayor. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. Just the most exciting news is, as of this past Friday, we are in the new firehouse and are running out of it 24 hours a day now. We are still doing a little bit of work ourselves in the building and on the outside also and stuff. But for the main part, we're up and running. I walked through the station at 5th and Broadway today, and it was kind of a weird feeling because most of that stuff has been moved out and moved up here now. I am working out of the new station, so is Assistant Chief Spalding. We're hoping at some time point with the COVID situation, we can have a nice open house, but until time, any council members that would like to come by and take a tour, be glad to show it off to them. Myself and Captain Trevor Mattingly will be leaving sometime mid-October to go to the plant that will be building the new fire truck, and we'll be doing a pre-build conference with them. That is paid for by the company. They allow so many trips and so many people to come to check it out, and we'll be visiting them throughout the process of the truck build. Excuse me. I was talking to Chief Kresick earlier today. Drugs that come into town, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, we had more drug overdoses than we had probably in the last 5 months of time. We're keeping an eye on that and doing the best we can with that situation. We did get a notice that we were
Chief, you're kind of cracking up. Can you get closer to the mic?
That didn't sound good.
Say better. Okay. We did receive word that we're going to be receiving $1,500 grant for Narcan purchase, and we'll be receiving that in the next couple of weeks. I had spoken before about the smoke detector program that we were wanting to do twice this year. The spring got canceled due to the COVID, and I got word today that the fall one has been canceled also. So we're hoping to pick that back up next year. That is where we'll go through, canvass a neighborhood, and offer to put up free smoke detectors in everybody's residence. So hopefully springtime, the virus will be about out of here, and we can continue that program. Also, the good news is we were getting so many requests for Oreo. Her vet has said that we can start coming back with her in October. So we will start doing school visits and other activities with her. We're currently at full staff. We are young. We've had to hire several young guys that have very little experience. We're having overtime to have what we call engineers. Basically, that's the person who drives the fire truck and does the pumping of the water to the fire and so forth. And it's not something you can just teach overnight. So we're working through that. We've had a couple of our firefighters volunteer to move to other shifts to help us out. So one shift's not overloaded with drivers, and another one doesn't have very many at all. And that we're up and running and doing a great. Get in there.
Chief, you mentioned you were talking about the overdoses.
Yes, sir.
Before, but that's the part where you were breaking up a whole lot. We didn't really hear what you were saying.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was talking to Chief Presic today, and she's going to be checking into it a little bit more. But Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, we have made more overdoses those days than we probably have in the last several months combined. Apparently, there's either some strong drugs that come into the county, or laced with fentanyl, a lot heavier than normal, and so forth. So far, no fatalities I'm aware of. But, we are going through an Narcan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions for Chief Mattingly? If not, I'll call on Chief Kresick to give us an update on police department.
Can you hear me a little bit better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. So it's just starting off with staffing. You know, right now, I think it's clear for everyone that it's really a difficult time to be a police officer anywhere, you know, in the country. And so with our staffing, we have an authorized strength of 31, and we just hired our 31st officer, and we're just waiting on Frankfurt for their approval. And so the 31st officer will start with us on October 1st, and we'll be at full strength. So I think that's something really important to note. The last 4 hires, you know, since we haven't been in session, we've not been able to bring officers in front of the council, but just kind of just to catch up on a couple of things. The last 4, 2 are from Nelson County, one's from Mount Washington, and one, the most recent one, lives in Taylorsville. So definitely getting a lot of officers that live in the community or are the counties surrounding that. So we're really excited about that. Our body cameras, if you've seen our officers out and about, we were implemented those toward the end of June. And it's a great added tool that we've added to our officers to have. Not only is it good for documentation, but it's also been really good for us as a training tool to identify any training needs that we need to implement in our training division. Our SRO, if you go to our Facebook later tonight, as you're just scrolling through social media, we were really enjoying the back to school photos that we saw. And so we have added our back to school photo of our SRO. Tom Blair started today for us as our new SRO. So he was excited to get in the schools and to be in person. So I think he's going to do a really, really good job in that. And then with COVID protocols, as you see, I am this black thing that I'm wearing around my neck right now is going to be something that we just got for our officers. This is our neck gaiter scarf. This is just something that's quick for the officers with the mask. One, if you wear them for 10 hours on and off, as you all wear masks, sometimes your ears start hurting. This is something that our officers is going to be an additional thing to stay in compliance with the governor's orders of being masked up. Our officers do wear those, but this will be something added for them to have at their convenience when they're in and out on the runs quickly to be able to utilize that. One thing that we're, knock on wood, that we're really happy and glad and that we've not had any officers that have become sick with COVID. And so they're doing a really good job staying up with that. And then last, crime, we're looking good right now with our crime. Karen, just comparing our crime statistics from January to the end of July from this year versus last year, we're down overall 19% in crime right now. And that's all I have.
That's some good numbers. Some good numbers. And yeah, I've heard even code enforcement has found that the body cams have really been a help to them. On occasion, they have to ask for some police support. And they said it's amazing how people, it kind of de-escalates the situation when they see that police officer has a body cam and will be recording comments that they might be making to the code enforcement officer. It's proven to be a helpful thing. So we're happy for that. Any other questions of either Chief Kresick or Chief Mattingly? Okay, if not, We will be going in to executive session. I need a motion that we go into executive session pursuant to KRS 61.810, paragraph 1 and B, deliberations on the future acquisition or sale of real property by a public agency when publicity would be likely to affect the value of the property. Can I get a motion to go into executive session, please?
I'll make the motion to go into executive session, Mayor.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
That was Councilman Hibbs. Hey, we're back in regular session. We had a vote to come out of executive session. We're back in regular session. Let the record show that we took no official action during our executive session. And we have nothing further on our agenda this evening, so I would ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I didn't catch who all made those motions.
There's
Everybody,
like 4 of us. I'll make that motion, Mayor.
I think Councilman Hibbs made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second, Mayor.
All right, second by Councilwoman Hart. All in favor for adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all for this evening, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks,
See you,
everybody.
Good night,
See
everybody.
you soon.
Good night.
Yes.